When my daughter stole every penny from our accounts and ran off with her criminal boyfriend, my world shattered like glass. I sat alone at our kitchen table, staring at the bank statement that showed zeros where our life savings had been. Then my 8-year-old grandson touched my trembling hand and whispered, "Grandma, don't worry. I handled it." 3 days later, when the phone rang and I heard my daughter screaming on the other end, I realized that sometimes the strongest people in our lives are the ones we're supposed to protect. If you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved with your whole heart, subscribe now and tell me in the comments if you've ever had to choose between loyalty and blood. They say a mother knows her child better than anyone in the world. I used to believe that. Lord knows I believed it when I held my daughter Melissa for the first time 53 years ago. Her tiny fingers curled around mine like she was making me a promise. I believed it when I worked double shifts at the hospital, my feet swollen and aching, just so she could have dance lessons and pretty clothes. I believed it when she brought home her first boyfriend, and I saw the trouble in his eyes that she couldn't. But on the morning I found out Melissa had emptied our bank accounts, every last cent of our retirement, our emergency fund, even the money set aside for her son's education, I realized I never knew her at all. I remember staring at the computer screen, the cursor blinking on the balance. $0. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. I called the bank, my hands shaking so badly I could hardly dial the number. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Caldwell," the bank representative said, her voice dripping with that special kind of pity reserved for fools. "The withdrawals were made yesterday afternoon by an authorized user on the account. Your daughter, Melissa Caldwell." My throat closed up. There must be some mistake. That's over $300,000. The transactions were completed with proper identification and account verification, she said, like she was reading from a script. "If you believe this was unauthorized, you'll need to file a police report." Unauthorized. Such a clean, simple word for something so filthy. My own daughter. I hung up the phone and sat at our kitchen table, the one my husband Robert and I had bought when we first got married. Robert had passed away just 18 months ago. Cancer took him quick. Thank God for small mercies. He didn't live to see what his little girl would become. "Grandma?" I looked up to see my grandson, Ethan, standing in the doorway. 8 years old with his grandfather's serious eyes. He was still in his dinosaur pajamas, his dark hair sticking up in all directions. "What's wrong?" he asked, and the concern in his voice nearly broke me. Children his age shouldn't have to worry about grown-up problems. But Ethan had never really been allowed to be a child, not with Melissa as his mother. "Nothing, sweetheart," I said, wiping my eyes quickly. "Just grown-up stuff." He came and stood beside me, looking at the computer screen. Too smart for his own good, that boy. "Is it Mom again?" he asked. My heart squeezed. "Why would you ask that?" He shrugged, those little shoulders carrying too much knowledge. "She and Derek were talking about money last night. They thought I was asleep." Derek. Just the name made my skin crawl. 6 months ago, Melissa had brought him home. Tattoos crawling up his neck, eyes that never quite met yours when he spoke. She'd met him at some bar, she said. He was misunderstood, she said. He had plans, she said. Robert would have run him off with a shotgun. But Robert was gone, and I was trying not to judge, trying to keep Melissa close. So I smiled and made dinner and pretended not to notice when things started disappearing around the house. Robert's watch, my mother's silver, prescription pills from my medicine cabinet. What were they saying about money? I asked Ethan, trying to keep my voice steady. He climbed onto the chair next to me, his face serious. "Derek said you had plenty and Mom wouldn't miss it once they were gone. They're going to Mexico." The room seemed to tilt. Mexico. $300,000. My daughter and her criminal boyfriend had planned this, talked about it right under our roof, with her own son sleeping, or so they thought, in the next room. "Ethan, honey," I said, taking his small hands in mine. "Where is your mom now?" "They left early this morning. She came in my room and kissed me goodbye. She said she'd call in a few days." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading a weather report. But his eyes, those eyes held a lifetime of disappointment. "She's not coming back, is she?" I couldn't lie to him.
Not now.
I don't think so, sweetheart. He nodded, like this was exactly what he'd expected.
No tears, no tantrums.
Just acceptance from a child who'd learned too young that people leave. Are we going to be okay? He asked. The question hung in the air between us. Were we? Every dollar we had was gone. My Social Security wouldn't cover the mortgage on this house, let alone food and clothes and everything a growing boy needs. At 68, who would hire me for enough hours to make ends meet? But looking at Ethan's face, so brave, so worried about me when he should be worried about himself, I knew I had to be stronger than I felt. We're going to be just fine, I said, squeezing his hands. I promise. That's when he gave me that smile, the one that looked so much like Robert's, and said the words that would haunt me for days to come. Grandma, don't worry. I handled it. I didn't understand what he meant then. How could an 8-year-old handle something like this? I assumed it was just a child's way of trying to comfort me. I was wrong. The first 24 hours after discovering what Melissa had done were a blur of panic and shame. I called the police, my voice breaking as I told them my own daughter had stolen from me. The officer who took my statement looked at me with that same pity the bank representative had shown. Family theft is more common than you'd think, ma'am, he said, scribbling notes. But it's going to be hard to prove this wasn't a gift. You said she was an authorized user on the accounts. I nodded. After Robert died, I'd added Melissa to all the accounts.
Just in case something happened to me.
Just in case Ethan needed the money. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. And there were no restrictions on how much she could withdraw?
No, y para.
She's my daughter. I trusted her. He sighed, like he'd heard this story 100 times before. We'll file the report, but I have to be honest with you. Without proof that she took the money without permission, and with her being an authorized user, this may end up being a civil matter rather than criminal. In other words, you're probably never seeing that money again. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table again, surrounded by papers, bank statements, mortgage documents, bills. The numbers swam before my eyes. We had 3 months, maybe 4, before everything fell apart. I could sell my video games, Ethan said, startling me. He'd been so quiet, sitting in the living room with a book, I'd almost forgotten he was there. Oh, honey, no, I said, my heart breaking all over again. That's not your responsibility. But I want to help, he insisted, coming to stand beside me. And I don't need them anyway. I pulled him into a hug, burying my face in his hair, so he wouldn't see me cry. This child, this beautiful boy who'd been abandoned by his own mother, was offering to sell his toys to help me pay the bills. We'll figure something out, I promised him. Together. That night, after I tucked Ethan into bed, I sat alone in the living room with a glass of Robert's whiskey. I'd never been much of a drinker, but tonight seemed like a good night to start. The house felt too quiet, too empty, like Melissa had taken more than just our money when she left. My phone rang, breaking the silence. For a moment, my heart leapt. Maybe it was Melissa, calling to say it was all a mistake, that she was coming home. But the screen showed a name I hadn't seen in years. Patricia Morgan, my younger sister. Evelyn. Her voice was cautious, like she was approaching a wounded animal. I just heard about Melissa. Is it true? The shame rushed back, hot and suffocating. How did you hear?
Small town, she said simply.
Nancy from your church called Beth, who called me.
Of course.
News like this, juicy, scandalous news about the Caldwell family, would spread like wildfire through Liberty Creek. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Evelyn Caldwell's daughter had robbed her blind and run off with a criminal. It's true. I admit it. The words bitter on my tongue. She took everything, Patty. Every last penny. Oh, Evie. The sympathy in her voice made it worse somehow.
I'm so sorry.
What can I do? What could anyone do? The money was gone.
My daughter was gone. Nothing, I said.
I just need some time to figure things out. You can come stay with us, she offered. You and Ethan. There's plenty of room and… No. I cut her off, perhaps too sharply. Thank you, but no. This is our home. I'm not uprooting Ethan again. Not after everything he's been through. There was a pause, and I could practically hear her thinking. Patricia had always been the sensible one, the one who married well and made good decisions. Not like me, who had followed my heart right into poverty and struggle, even if I'd never regretted loving Robert. You know, I never like to say it, she began carefully, but Melissa has always been difficult. Even as a child. The protective instinct flared in me, automatic and fierce. She's my daughter, Patricia. And she stole your life savings, she reminded me bluntly. After everything you sacrificed for her. After all those years of working yourself to the bone, so she could have what she wanted. I don't need you to tell me what my daughter did. I snapped, the whiskey making me brave. Or foolish. No. You need me to tell you what you've been avoiding for years, she shot back. Melissa has been using you since she was a teenager. The constant bailouts, the loans she never repays, taking advantage of your kindness. And now this. She's still my child, I whispered, but the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. And what about her child? What about Ethan? Patricia asked. When are you going to put him first? When are you going to stop enabling her and start protecting him?
Her words hit me like a slap.
Because deep down, in the place I'd been avoiding looking, I knew she was right. I'd always made excuses for Melissa. Always believed that if I just loved her enough, supported her enough, she'd straighten out. But all I'd done was give her more rope to hang us both. I have to go, I said, not trusting myself to say more without breaking down. Evie, wait. I hung up, set the phone down, and took another sip of whiskey. The liquid burned my throat, but it was nothing compared to the burning in my chest. Shame mixed with anger mixed with a grief, so profound I could barely breathe. My daughter had stolen from me. My daughter had abandoned her son. My daughter had chosen a criminal over her family. And the worst part? Some small voice inside me whispered that I should have seen it coming all along. Morning came with a pounding headache and the harsh reality that yesterday hadn't been a nightmare. It was my new normal. I forced myself out of bed, washed my face, and stared at the stranger in the mirror. When had I gotten so old? The lines around my eyes seemed deeper, the silver in my hair more pronounced. I found Ethan already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal. I made coffee, he said, pointing to the pot. And I let Rex out and fed him. Rex was our ancient golden retriever, more Ethan's dog than anyone's. Another pang hit me. What would happen to Rex if we couldn't afford to keep the house? Thank you, sweetheart, I said, pouring myself a cup. You didn't have to do that. He shrugged. I don't mind. Are you feeling better?
Better.
Such a simple word for the mountain I had to climb. I'm okay, I lied, sitting across from him. Ethan, we need to talk about what's happening. He nodded solemnly, waiting for the bad news. Your mom has made some very bad choices, I began, choosing my words carefully. She took money that wasn't hers to take, and she left without telling us where she was going. She went to Mexico with Derek, he said matter-of-factly. Yes, that's what we think. The police are looking for them, but it might be hard to find them. I took a deep breath. In the meantime, we need to make some changes around here. I might have to find a job, and we'll need to be careful with money for a while. Are we poor now? He asked, his eyes wide and curious. The question nearly broke me. We have less than we did before, I admitted. But we're not poor in the ways that matter. We have each other and this house and Rex. We'll be okay. He seemed to consider this, then nodded again. I can help. I'm good at math and I can do chores, and maybe Mrs. Wilson next door would pay me to walk her dog like she did last summer. My eyes filled with tears. This child, this incredible child who had been dealt the worst hand imaginable, was thinking of ways to help me instead of feeling sorry for himself. Let's not worry about that just yet, I said, reaching across the table to smooth his hair. First, I need to make some phone calls and figure out exactly where we stand. Where we stood, as it turned out, was on the edge of a cliff. The mortgage had 2 months before foreclosure would begin. The electricity and water were on automatic payments that would bounce when they tried to draw from our empty accounts. The credit cards were nearly maxed out already. Melissa's handiwork over the past few months, I discovered, as I went through the statements. By noon, I was lightheaded with panic. $300,000, our entire life savings, the money that was supposed to see me through my old age and give Ethan a start in life. Gone in a single day. And then the doorbell rang. I wasn't prepared for visitors. I hadn't showered, hadn't put on makeup, was still in my robe and slippers. But the bell kept ringing, insistent and demanding. When I opened the door, I found Martha Kingsley on my porch, her thin lips pursed in what might have been concern but looked more like judgment. Martha was the self-appointed queen of Liberty Creek Baptist Church, where I'd been a member since Robert and I moved here 40 years ago. "Evelyn," she said, looking me up and down. "I came as soon as I heard." Of course she had. Martha never missed an opportunity to be the first to witness a tragedy or a scandal. "This isn't a good time, Martha," I said, trying to close the door, but she stuck her foot in the gap. "I brought casserole," she said, holding up a dish. "And the prayer circle wants you to know we're all here for you." The prayer circle. In other words, the entire town now knew my business. "Thank you," I said stiffly, taking the dish. "I appreciate the thought." She didn't leave. Instead, she craned her neck, trying to see past me into the house. "Is the boy here?" Poor little lamb. First no father and now this. The casual cruelty of her words made my spine stiffen. Ethan had never known his father, some college boy who disappeared the minute Melissa told him she was pregnant. It had been a source of gossip for years, whispers that followed us through the aisles at the grocery store and the pews at church. "Ethan is fine," I said coolly. "We both are." "Well, of course you are," Martha said, not believing it for a second. "But if you need anything at all, you just call. The church has a fund, for emergencies." Charity. She was offering me charity, served with a side of humiliation. "That's very kind," I managed, "but we're managing just fine." Her eyes flicked past me again, taking in the stack of bills visible on the hall table, the worn carpet, the faded wallpaper that Robert and I had always meant to replace. "Of course you are," she repeated. "But sometimes pride gets in the way of accepting God's help, Evelyn. And God helps those who help themselves. God helps those who help themselves." As if I hadn't worked every day of my life, as if I hadn't sacrificed everything for my family, as if being robbed by my own daughter was somehow a failure of self-reliance. "I'll keep that in mind," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some calls to make." I closed the door before she could say anything else, leaning against it and closing my eyes. The casserole was still warm in my hands, the smell of chicken and cream of mushroom soup wafting up to me. Despite everything, my stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. When I opened my eyes, Ethan was standing at the end of the hallway, watching me. "Was that Mrs. Kingsley?" he asked. I nodded, forcing a smile. "She brought us dinner." "She's nosy," he said with the brutal honesty of a child. "And she smells like cats." A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, surprising us both. "Ethan Caldwell, that's not a kind thing to say." "But it's true," he insisted, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I set the casserole down on the hall table and opened my arms. He came to me immediately, burrowing into my embrace like he used to when he was smaller. "We're going to be okay," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "We've got each other, and that's what matters." "I know," he said, his voice muffled against my robe. Then he pulled back, looking up at me with those serious eyes. "Grandma, don't worry. I handled it." There it was again, that strange phrase, said with such confidence. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked. "What did you handle?" But he just shook his head, that same secretive smile on his face, and wandered back down the hall to where Rex was waiting. I should have pressed him. Should have insisted he explain. But I was too overwhelmed, too caught up in my own crisis to recognize the importance of his words. That was my second mistake. By the third day after Melissa's theft, the reality of our situation had settled over me like a heavy blanket. I'd spent hours on the phone with banks, credit card companies, utility providers, explaining, pleading, arranging payment plans where I could. I'd filled out forms for the police, answered the same questions over and over. Yes, she was authorized on the accounts. No, she didn't have permission to take everything. Yes, I want to press charges. No, I don't know exactly where in Mexico they went. The shame had begun to curdle into anger. How could she do this to me? To her son? After everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd forgiven over the years, the dropped out of college, the string of bad boyfriends, the loans that were never repaid, the nights I'd stayed up waiting for her to come home, sick with worry. I'd always made excuses for her. She's young, I'd say. She's finding herself. She had a hard time after Ethan was born. She's struggling with being a single mother. But this was beyond excuses. This was calculated cruelty. I was sitting at the kitchen table again, trying to figure out how to make $78 stretch until my next Social Security check, when the phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown, and for a moment I hesitated. Bill collectors had already started calling, but something made me answer. Hello? Mom? My heart stopped. Melissa? Melissa? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Where are you? What have you done? Mom, listen to me, she said, her voice tight with what sounded like fear. Something's wrong. The money's gone. I almost laughed. Yes, Melissa. The money is gone. You took it. No, you don't understand. There was a strange echo to her voice, like she was calling from somewhere cavernous. We had it. We had all of it. And now it's gone. Someone took it. The irony was almost too much to bear. Someone stole from the thief? I'd call that karma. This isn't funny. Her voice rose, edging toward hysteria. We need that money, Derek says. I don't care what Derek says. I cut in, anger making me bold. That was our retirement money, Melissa. That was Ethan's college fund. How could you? There was a pause, then her voice came back, harder now. You don't understand. You never understood. This was my chance to start over, to have the life I deserve. And now it's ruined. The life she deserved. As if she deserved to profit from stealing from her own mother, from abandoning her own child. Where are you? I demanded again. The police are looking for you. The police? Now there was real fear in her voice. You called the police on me? Your own daughter? You stole $300,000, Melissa. That's a felony. It wasn't stealing, she shouted. You owed me that money. After everything I've been through, everything I've put up with in that miserable town, with your constant judgment and Dad's disappointment. Don't you dare, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Don't you dare bring your father into this. He loved you more than life itself. He controlled me, she shot back. Both of you did. Always telling me what to do, who to see, how to live my life. And then you stuck me with a kid I never wanted in the first place. The words hit me like physical blows. A kid I never wanted. My precious Ethan, who is even now sitting in the living room, probably able to hear every word of this conversation. Melissa and Caldwell, I said, using her full name like I had when she was a child in trouble. You listen to me. That kid is your son. He is 8 years old, and he is the most incredible, brilliant, kind child I have ever known. And you left him. You chose a criminal over your own son. He's better off without me, she said dismissively. You always wanted him anyway. You were always trying to take over, to be his mother instead of his grandmother. Because you were never there. I cried, the dam finally breaking. You were out partying, or with whatever loser boyfriend you had that month. I was the one who went to his parent-teacher conferences, who took him to the doctor, who held him when he had nightmares. Exactly, she said, as if I'd just proven her point. So, what's the problem? You got what you wanted. You got Ethan. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. As if Ethan were a consolation prize for having my life savings stolen. The problem, I said, struggling to keep my voice level, is that you committed a crime. You stole money that wasn't yours. You broke your son's heart. And now you have the audacity to call me and complain that someone stole from you. She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by something calculating, almost cunning. "Mom, listen," she said softly. "I made a mistake, okay?
I see that now.
Derek, he convinced me to do it. He said we needed the money to start our new life, that you'd never miss it because you have your pension and the house." My pension. All $1,800 a month of it. And the house that was mortgaged to the hilt after Robert's medical bills. "But now the money's gone," she continued, "and Derek is furious. He's saying it's my fault, that I must have told someone our plan. He's scaring me, Mom." The sudden shift in her tone gave me pause. Was she in danger? Was this criminal boyfriend of hers threatening her? But then I remembered all the times before, the late-night calls for bail money, the tearful confessions of mistakes made, the promises to do better next time. Always followed by more mistakes, more demands, more disappointments. "Where are you, Melissa?" I asked again, keeping my voice steady. "I can't tell you that," she said quickly. "Derek would kill me. Are you in Mexico?" A pause.
"Yes."
"But I want to come home. I made a terrible mistake. I see that now." Home. The word hung between us, loaded with meaning. Was home here, with me and Ethan? Or was it just a convenient landing place when her plans fell apart? "If you want to come home," I said carefully, "you need to turn yourself in. You need to tell the police where the money went. You need to make this right." "Make it right." Her voice hardened again. "The money is gone, Mom. Someone took it. All of it. We don't have a cent left." A cold feeling crept up my spine. "What do you mean, someone took it?"
"Who?"
"I don't know," she cried. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. We had it in an account, and now it's gone. Transferred somewhere else." "When?" I pressed, something nagging at the back of my mind. "Yesterday morning. We went to withdraw some cash, and the account was empty. Completely drained. Yesterday morning. 3 days after she'd left. 3 days after Ethan had said those words to me. Grandma, don't worry. I handled it."
"No."
"It couldn't be. Mom." Melissa's voice snapped me back to the present. "Are you listening? We need help. Derek is going crazy. He thinks I double-crossed him." "And did you?" I asked, my mind racing.
"What? No."
"Of course not. Then where is the money, Melissa?" "I told you, I don't know. Someone must have hacked the account or something." Hacked the account. Or something. I felt eyes on me and looked up to see Ethan standing in the doorway, watching me with those wise, ancient eyes of his. And suddenly I knew. "I have to go," I said to Melissa.
"Mom, wait."
"You have to help us get back. Derek is talking about." I hung up, set the phone down carefully on the table, and looked at my grandson. "Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What did you do?" He walked into the kitchen and climbed onto the chair across from me, folding his hands on the table like a miniature businessman about to start a meeting. "I told you," he said simply. "I handled it." "The money?" I clarified, hardly daring to believe it. "You handle the money?" He nodded, completely calm. "Mom and Derek talked about it a lot. They thought I was sleeping, but I wasn't. They said they were going to take all your money and go to Mexico and open a beach bar." I stared at him, speechless. "Derek showed Mom how to transfer the money to their secret account," he continued. "He wrote down all the information in his notebook. The account number, the password, everything." "And you found the notebook," I guessed, my heart pounding.
He nodded again.
"It was in his jacket pocket. I took pictures of the pages with Mom's iPad. I knew they were going to do something bad. My God. My 8-year-old grandson had been investigating his own mother and her boyfriend, gathering evidence like a tiny detective. After they left," he went on, "I used Mom's computer. She never logs out of anything, and her password is always the same, my birthday." A small, sad smile flickered across his face. "I found the account where they put your money, and I transferred it back." "You transferred it back?" I repeated, stunned.
"How?"
"Where?" "To your account," he said, looking confused. "Where else would I put it?" "But Ethan, the accounts are empty. I checked them yesterday." He shook his head.
Not those accounts.
The secret one. What secret account? The one Grandpa made for me, he said, as if it were obvious. The one you don't know about. I felt like I'd stepped into an alternate universe. Your grandfather made you a secret account? Ethan nodded solemnly. Before he got really sick. He said it was for emergencies, and I wasn't supposed to tell anyone except you, but only if something bad happened. Robert. My Robert had set up a secret account for our grandson. And hadn't told me. He said Mom wasn't always good with money. Ethan continued, his voice small. He said sometimes she made bad choices. And he wanted to make sure I would be okay. The tears came then, hot and fast. Robert had known. He'd seen what I couldn't or wouldn't see. He'd protected our grandson the only way he knew how. Ethan, I said, reaching for his hands. What you did was very brave, but also very dangerous. If Derek finds out. He won't, Ethan said confidently. I cover my tracks. I watch a lot of crime shows with Mrs. Wilson when she babysits. Crime shows. My 8-year-old was learning about hiding digital footprints from crime shows. And the money? I asked. It's safe? All of it. He nodded. Grandpa's banker helped me. I called the number on the card Grandpa gave me. I told him what happened, and he helped me move the money. He said he'd call you to set up a meeting. A banker. Robert had involved a banker in this scheme. Who else had seen what I was blind to? Mr. Harrington. Ethan supplied, as if reading my thoughts. He's nice. He gave me a lollipop when Grandpa took me to his office. James Harrington. The name was familiar, an old friend of Robert's from his days working at the mill. He'd gone into banking later in life, I remembered. Ethan, I said, trying to wrap my mind around all of this. What you did was incredible, but also very serious. Your mother and Derek, they're very angry. They might come back. He looked at me steadily, no fear in his eyes.
Let them, he said.
We have proof now. They can go to jail.
Jail.
My daughter in jail. The thought should have horrified me, but all I felt was a strange, distant sadness, like mourning someone who had died long ago. Was that Mom on the phone? Ethan asked, glancing at the handset still sitting on the table. I nodded. She's upset about the money. Is she coming back? There it was, the question that really mattered, asked in a voice suddenly small and young. Despite everything, despite his incredible courage and maturity, he was still a little boy who wanted his mother to come home. I don't know, sweetheart, I said honestly. But even if she does, things will be different. She's done something very wrong, and there will be consequences. He considered this, then nodded, like he was accepting terms in a business deal. We should call the police again, he said. Tell them about the money. Yes, I agreed. We should. But before I could reach for the phone, it rang again. Unknown caller. Melissa calling back to try a different approach, no doubt. I let it ring, staring at Ethan across the table. This child, this remarkable child who had saved us both. Do you want me to answer it? He asked. I shook my head.
No.
Let's call the police first. Then we'll call Mr. Harrington. The phone stopped ringing, and the sudden silence felt like a door closing. A chapter ending. Are you mad at Mom? Ethan asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. Was I mad? Mad seemed too small a word for the hurricane of emotions swirling inside me. Betrayal, grief, disbelief, rage. I'm disappointed, I said finally. And sad. And yes, I'm angry. But mostly, I'm proud of you. So proud I can hardly stand it. He smiled then, a real smile that lit up his whole face. I just did what Grandpa would have done. He always said family takes care of family. Family takes care of family. Yes, that sounded like Robert. But what did it mean when family betrayed family? When the very person who should love you most was the one who hurt you worst? The phone rang again, insistent and demanding. Ethan and I both stared at it, neither of us moving to answer. We should call the police, Ethan repeated, more firmly this time. I nodded, but still couldn't bring myself to reach for the phone. Because calling the police meant making it real. It meant admitting that my daughter was a criminal. It meant pressing charges against my own flesh and blood. When the ringing stopped, the silence hung heavy in the kitchen. Then, a sharp knock at the front door made us both jump. "Stay here," I told Ethan, pushing back from the table. The knocking continued, hard and aggressive. When I peered through the peephole, my blood ran cold. A man I didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and a neck full of tattoos, stood on my porch, his face a mask of barely contained rage. "I know you're in there," he shouted, pounding on the door again. "Open up, or I swear to God I'll kick it down." My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd never seen this man before, but I knew exactly who he was. One of Derek's associates. The kind of man who did the dirty work when money was involved. "I'm calling the police," I called through the door, trying to keep my voice steady. "Go ahead," he sneered. "I'll be long gone before they get here. But I won't leave empty-handed. You know what I'm here for." The money. He was here for the money that Melissa and Derek had stolen, the money that Ethan had somehow managed to recover. "There's nothing here for you," I said, my fingers already dialing 911 on my cell phone. "Leave now, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Lady, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Your daughter took something that doesn't belong to her, and we want it back. All of it." My finger hovered over the call button. "My daughter?" I repeated, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," he spat. "Melissa, Derek's girlfriend. She cleaned out their account and disappeared. He thinks she's headed back here, back to mommy. So I'm here to make sure she returns what's ours." A chill ran through me. Melissa had left Derek? Or had she taken the money and run, leaving him behind just like she'd left Ethan? Either way, this man believed she was coming here, and he wanted whatever he thought she'd stolen. "I haven't seen my daughter in 3 days, I said, which was the absolute truth. "She's not here." "Maybe not yet," he conceded, "but she will be. And when she shows up, you tell her Carl came by. Tell her we want our money, or things are going to get real ugly real fast."
Carl.
Now I had a name to give the police. "I'll tell her if I see her," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Now please leave my property." There was a long silence, then a low chuckle that made my skin crawl. "Sure thing, Grandma.
I'll go.
But I'll be back. And next time, I won't be so polite." I watched through the peephole as he swaggered down the porch steps and climbed into a black truck with tinted windows. Only when the truck disappeared down the street did I release the breath I'd been holding. "Grandma?" Ethan's small voice came from behind me. "Who was that?" I turned to find him standing in the hallway, Rex at his side, the old dog's hackles raised, as if he sensed the danger. "Just someone looking for your mom," I said, trying to sound casual. Nothing to worry about. But Ethan, as always, saw right through me. It was one of Derek's friends, wasn't it? The scary ones. I knelt down to his level, placing my hands on his shoulders. "Ethan, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We need to call the police right now. Not just about the money, but about that man who was just here. It's not safe for us to be alone." He nodded solemnly. "I know. I already called them." For the second time that day, my grandson left me speechless. "You what?" "I called 911 when I heard him yelling," Ethan explained, holding up my old cell phone, the one I'd given him for emergencies. "I told them there's a scary man at our door threatening us. They said to stay inside and lock all the doors and windows, and they're sending someone right away." I pulled him into a fierce hug, my eyes burning with tears. "You are the bravest, smartest boy in the whole world," I whispered into his hair. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you." He hugged me back, his small arms tight around my neck. "Are we going to be okay, Grandma?" "Yes," I said with a conviction I didn't entirely feel. "We're going to be just fine." But as I held him, looking over his shoulder at the front door where Carl had stood moments ago, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Melissa had set something in motion that wouldn't be easily stopped, and we were caught in the middle of it. The police arrived within minutes. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing but sirens silent. Officer Daniels, the same one who had taken my report about the stolen money, led the team. Mrs. Caldwell. He greeted me, his expression grim. Your grandson said someone was threatening you? I nodded, ushering them into the living room where Ethan sat with Rex, the dog's head resting protectively on the boy's lap. A man named Carl. I explained, describing him in detail. He was looking for my daughter. He seemed to think she'd stolen money from Derek, her boyfriend, and was coming here. Officer Daniels' eyebrows shot up. The same boyfriend she supposedly ran off to Mexico with? After emptying your accounts. Yes, I confirmed. But according to this Carl, she's taken money from Derek too and disappeared. He was very insistent about getting it back. The officer exchanged glances with his partner, a younger woman whose nameplate read Martinez. Ma'am, Officer Martinez said gently, has it occurred to you that your daughter might be in danger? If this Derek character thinks she's double-crossed him. The thought had crossed my mind, of course. Despite everything, Melissa was still my daughter. The idea of her in danger made my stomach twist. I spoke to her on the phone just before that man showed up, I admitted. She said the money was gone, stolen from their account. She thought I might have had something to do with it. And did you? Officer Daniels asked bluntly. No, I said, then hesitated, glancing at Ethan. But I think we need to talk privately. The officers followed me into the kitchen, leaving Ethan with Rex and the fourth officer, a kind-faced man who was already asking my grandson about his dinosaur t-shirt. Mrs. Caldwell, Officer Daniels began once we were alone. I need you to be completely honest with us. This situation has escalated from a family theft to potential organized crime involvement. If you know where the money is. I don't, I interrupted. Not exactly. But my grandson does. Their expressions shifted from skepticism to surprise. Your grandson? The 8-year-old. I nodded, then told them everything. About Robert's secret account, about Ethan discovering Derek's notebook, about the recovery of the funds. As I spoke, their faces registered disbelief, then amazement. Let me get this straight, Officer Martinez said when I finished. Your 8-year-old grandson essentially hacked into a criminal's bank account and recovered $300,000 of stolen money. Put that way, it sounded impossible. But I'd learned not to underestimate Ethan. He had help, I clarified, from my late husband's banker friend. But yes, that's the gist of it. Officer Daniels let out a low whistle. Mrs. Caldwell, your grandson just made himself a target for some very dangerous people. If Derek and his associates find out what he did. The fear I'd been holding at bay rushed back, cold and sharp. What do we do? How do we protect him? First things first, Officer Martinez said, her voice calm and professional. We need to secure that money as evidence. We'll need to speak with this banker. James Harrington, I supplied, at First National. And set up a formal statement from your grandson. But most importantly, we need to make sure you're both safe. We can place a patrol car outside your house for night, Officer Daniels offered. But I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Caldwell. If these people are as serious as they seem, that might not be enough. What are you saying? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'm saying you might want to consider staying somewhere else for a while. Somewhere these people wouldn't think to look for you. Somewhere else. Leave our home? The thought was almost as terrifying as staying. I don't know where we would go, I admitted. My sister lives in Florida, but that's the first place Melissa would look. Do you have any friends who might take you in? Just for a few days, until we can get a handle on this situation? Friends. The word echoed hollowly. After Robert died, I'd withdrawn from most of our social circle. The casseroles and sympathy cards had stopped coming after a few weeks, and I'd been too consumed with grief, then with raising Ethan, to maintain those connections. But there was one person, someone who owed Robert a favor, someone who lived far enough away to be safe, but close enough to reach quickly. Frank Wheeler, I said slowly. My husband's best friend from the service. He has a cabin up in the mountains, about 2 hours from here. He's offered before to let us use it. Officer Daniels nodded approvingly. That sounds perfect. Is there a way to contact him without using your phone? We should assume your daughter has your number, which means Derek might too. I have his number in my address book, I said. I can use your phone to call him. Good. And Mrs. Caldwell? Officer Martinez looked at me intently. Pack only what you absolutely need, and don't tell anyone where you're going. Not your neighbors, not your friends, not even your sister. The fewer people who know, the safer you'll be. The reality of our situation was sinking in. We were going into hiding from my own daughter, from her criminal boyfriend, from men like Carl who wouldn't hesitate to hurt a child to get what they wanted. What about the money? I asked. If it's in this secret account, we'll have our cybercrimes unit work with Mr. Harrington to secure it, Officer Daniels assured me. The important thing is keeping you and your grandson safe. I nodded, trying to process everything. I should tell Ethan. He'll need to understand why we're leaving. Of course, Officer Martinez said kindly. We'll give you a moment with him. But Mrs. Caldwell, you should be incredibly proud of that boy. What he did was remarkable. Proud didn't begin to cover it. But mixed with that pride was a terrible fear. Fear that Ethan's brave actions had put him in the crosshairs of people who wouldn't think twice about hurting a child. When I returned to the living room, Ethan was showing the officer his dinosaur book, pointing out his favorites and explaining which ones were carnivores and which were herbivores. He looked up when I entered, and something in my expression must have alerted him. We have to leave, don't we? He asked, once again displaying that uncanny ability to read a situation. I nodded, sitting beside him on the couch. Just for a little while, sweetheart. Until the police can find Derek and make sure he can't hurt us. What about Mom? He asked, his voice small. What if she comes back and we're not here? The question broke my heart. Despite everything, he still hoped his mother would return to him. The police will know how to find us if your mom comes back, I assured him, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. Right now, we need to focus on keeping ourselves safe. He considered this, then nodded solemnly. Where are we going? To Mr. Wheeler's cabin. Remember him? Grandpa's friend who took us fishing last summer? Ethan's face brightened slightly. The one with the big dog? And the lake. That's the one, I confirmed, relieved to see a spark of enthusiasm. And we're going to take Rex with us, of course. At the sound of his name, the old dog's tail thumped against the floor. When do we leave? Ethan asked, already more adaptable than any child should have to be. As soon as we pack, I told him. Just the essentials, clothes, toiletries, and maybe 1 or 2 books or toys for you. He nodded again, sliding off the couch. I'll go pack my backpack. As he headed for his room, Rex trailing loyally behind him, Officer Daniels approached me. Mrs. Caldwell, there's one more thing we need to discuss, he said quietly. Your daughter's phone call. Did she give any indication of where she might be? I shook my head. No. But there was an echo, like she was calling from somewhere large and empty. And she mentioned Derek was furious about the missing money. Which suggests they're still together, he mused. Despite what this Carl character seems to think. You think they're working together? I asked, the possibility turning my stomach. That this is some kind of scam? It's possible, he admitted. Or it could be that Derek is using your daughter as bait to recover the money. Either way, until we know for sure, we need to proceed with caution. Caution. The words seemed inadequate for the storm we were facing. But what choice did we have? I'll pack quickly, I promised. And officer? Thank you for taking this seriously. He nodded, his expression grim. Mrs. Caldwell, when a man like the one you described shows up at your door looking for money, we always take it seriously. These aren't people who make idle threats. His words followed me as I went to my bedroom to pack, echoing in my mind like a warning bell. These aren't people who make idle threats. And they were after my grandson, my brave, brilliant, vulnerable grandson who had dared to stand up to them. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I made a silent vow. I would protect Ethan with my life if necessary. I had failed with Melissa, failed to see the darkness growing in her, failed to set boundaries, failed to hold her accountable. I would not fail again. 20 minutes later, we were ready. 2 suitcases, Ethan's backpack, a bag of dog food for Rex, and my emergency medication. The essentials of our lives, packed in haste and fear. Officer Martinez helped load everything into her patrol car. "I'll drive you to a safe location where Mr. Wheeler can pick you up," she explained. "We don't want anyone following you directly from here." I nodded, grateful for her thoroughness. As we prepared to leave, I took one last look at our home, the house Robert and I had bought as newlyweds, the place where we'd raised our daughter, the only home Ethan had ever known. Would we ever see it again? Or would this be the beginning of a new chapter, one marked by fear and flight? "Grandma?" Ethan's small hand slipped into mine. "It's going to be okay. We're in this together." Despite everything, I smiled down at him. "Yes, we are. You, me, and Rex against the world." "And Grandpa," he added softly. "He's still watching over us. I can feel it." I squeezed his hand, blinking back tears. "Yes, sweetheart. Grandpa, too." As we climbed into the patrol car, Rex settling nervously on the floor at Ethan's feet, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were leaving more than just our home behind. We were leaving our old lives, our naivety, our trust in the world. But maybe, just maybe, we were also leaving behind the blinders that had kept me from seeing the truth about my daughter for far too long. Frank Wheeler's cabin was exactly as I remembered it, rustic, remote, and reassuringly solid. Nestled in the pine forests of the Blue Ridge Mountains, it sat at the end of a long dirt road, the nearest neighbor over a mile away. Frank himself was waiting on the porch when Officer Martinez's unmarked car pulled up, his tall frame still straight and proud despite his 70 years. His own dog, a massive German shepherd named Chief, stood alertly at his side. "Evelyn," he called, coming down the steps to meet us. "It's been too long." I climbed out of the car, exhaustion making my movement stiff. "Frank, thank you for this. I know it's a lot to ask." He waved away my gratitude. "Robert would have done the same for me. Besides, it's not every day I get company up here." His eyes shifted to Ethan, who was coaxing a reluctant Rex from the back seat. "And there's the young man of the hour. Officer Martinez filled me in on your adventure, son." Ethan looked up, a flicker of pride crossing his face before uncertainty returned. "Is it okay that we brought Rex? He's old, but he's quiet." Frank laughed, a booming sound that echoed through the trees. "Of course it's okay. Chief here could use the company. Gets lonely being the only dog on the mountain." As if on cue, Chief trotted over to inspect Rex, who nervously wagged his tail in response to the larger dog's interest. "They'll be fine," Frank assured me, seeing my concern. "Chief's a gentleman with other dogs, especially seniors." Officer Martinez helped us unload our bags, then pulled me aside. "Mrs. Caldwell, we've arranged for a secure line here at the cabin. If you need to reach us, use this phone." She handed me a basic flip phone. "It's untraceable and has my direct number programmed in. Call if you see or hear anything suspicious." I nodded, slipping the phone into my pocket. "Any news on Derek or Melissa?" "Not yet," she admitted. "But we've got officers watching your house, and we're monitoring all the accounts associated with the stolen funds. If either of them makes a move, we'll know." "And the money? Is it safe?" "Mr. Harrington has been very cooperative. The funds have been secured in an account only the court can access. Your grandson's actions may have saved your life savings, Mrs. Caldwell, but until this is resolved, the money is evidence in a criminal investigation." I understood, of course. The money wasn't what mattered anymore. It was Ethan's safety and mine. "Thank you," I said, extending my hand. "For everything." She shook it firmly. "Take care of that remarkable grandson of yours. We'll be in touch." As the car disappeared down the dirt road, Frank placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Come on inside. You look dead on your feet, and I've got stew on the stove." The cabin's interior was warm and inviting, knotty pine walls, a stone fireplace, comfortable if slightly worn furniture. The smell of beef stew and fresh bread filled the air, making my stomach growl. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten a proper meal. "This is awesome," Ethan breathed, taking in the rustic decor, the mounted fish on the walls, the view of the lake through the back windows. "It's like a real adventure cabin." Frank chuckled. "That it is, son. Your grandpa and I had plenty of adventures here back in the day. Now, why don't you take your things to the room at the top of the stairs? It's all made up for you." As Ethan bounded up the wooden staircase, Rex following more slowly behind, Frank turned to me. "How are you holding up, really?" he asked, his weathered face creased with concern. I sank onto the leather sofa, suddenly too exhausted to maintain my brave facade. "I don't know, Frank. I'm terrified, angry, heartbroken. How could she do this? How could I not see it coming?" He sat beside me, his presence solid and comforting, so like Robert's it made my chest ache. "Evelyn, you can't blame yourself for Melissa's choices. Some people, they're just wired wrong. No matter how much love you pour into them, they take and never give back." "She's my daughter," I whispered. "My baby girl. I should have known." "And she's a grown woman who made a terrible choice," he countered firmly, "who stole from her own mother and abandoned her own son. That's not on you, Evelyn. That's on her." His words, harsh but true, brought fresh tears to my eyes. "What am I going to do, Frank? Even if the police catch her, even if we get the money back, how do I explain to Ethan that his mother chose a criminal over him? That she was willing to steal his future?" Frank's expression softened. "I think that boy already understands more than you give him credit for. And from what I hear, he's already shown more courage and character than most grown men I know." "He's amazing," I agreed, a flicker of pride cutting through my despair. "So smart, so brave. But he's still just a child. He deserves better than this." "Yes, he does," Frank said quietly. "And he has you. That counts for a lot." Before I could respond, Ethan came bounding back down the stairs, Rex trailing behind him. "Mr. Wheeler, there's a telescope in my room. Can I use it to look at the stars tonight?" Frank's serious expression melted into a warm smile. "You sure can, buddy. The stars up here are something else. No city lights to drown them out. Your grandpa and I used to spend hours with that telescope." "Really?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "Did Grandpa know a lot about stars?" "He knew enough to impress your grandma when they were dating." Frank winked at me. "Nothing makes a girl swoon like pointing out Orion's belt on a clear night." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, remembering those early dates with Robert. His serious face as he named constellations, his warm hand holding mine under the starry sky. "Now," Frank continued, rubbing his hands together, "who's hungry? That stew's been simmering all day, and I've got fresh cornbread to go with it." "Me," Ethan declared, his earlier anxieties seemingly forgotten in the adventure of the cabin. "Can Rex and Chief have some too?" "They sure can," Frank assured him. "Nothing but the best for our four-legged friends." As we gathered around Frank's pine table, the stew steaming in pottery bowls, the dogs settled contentedly nearby, I felt the first faint stirring of peace since this nightmare began. We were safe, at least for now. Ethan was resilient, already adapting to our new circumstances. And I had a true friend in Frank Wheeler, someone who had known Robert, who understood loss, who asked for nothing in return for his generosity. But as darkness fell outside the cabin windows, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, Melissa and Derek were plotting their next move. And somehow, I knew it would be aimed directly at us. 3 days passed in the peaceful isolation of the mountain cabin. 3 days of Ethan exploring the woods with Frank and the dogs, learning to fish in the lake, studying the stars through the telescope. 3 days of my nerves slowly unwinding, my guard cautiously lowering. Officer Martinez called each evening with updates. They'd found Derek's truck abandoned near the Mexican border, but no sign of him or Melissa. Carl, the man who had threatened us, had disappeared as well. The house remained undisturbed, watched round the clock by plainclothes officers. "We're making progress," she assured me. "We've frozen all known accounts associated with Derek Lewis, and we've issued warrants for both their arrests. It's just a matter of time." But time was the one thing I feared we might not have. Because despite the peace of the cabin, despite Ethan's apparent recovery from the trauma, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were merely in the eye of the storm. On the 4th morning, I woke before dawn, an inexplicable sense of dread settling over me like a physical weight. The cabin was silent except for Frank's gentle snoring from the couch, where he insisted on sleeping, giving Ethan and me the 2 bedrooms. I slipped out of bed and padded to the window, parting the curtains to look out at the misty forest. The world was still dark, the sky just beginning to lighten at the edges. Nothing moved in the trees, no unusual sounds disturbed the pre-dawn quiet. So why couldn't I shake this feeling of impending danger? Moving quietly so as not to wake the others, I made coffee and took my cup out to the front porch, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders against the mountain chill. Chief followed, settling at my feet with a contented sigh. As the sky slowly brightened, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold, I tried to sort through my tangled emotions. Anger at Melissa for her betrayal, fear for Ethan's safety, guilt for not seeing the warning signs, and beneath it all, a deep, aching grief for the daughter I had lost long before she stole our money and ran. Where had I gone wrong? What had turned my sweet little girl into a woman capable of such calculated cruelty? Was it losing her father so young? The string of disappearing boyfriends? My own failures as a mother? The questions circled endlessly, offering no answers, no peace. The creak of the screen door startled me from my thoughts. Frank stepped out, his own coffee cup in hand. "You're up early," he observed, lowering himself into the rocking chair beside me. "Trouble sleeping?" I nodded, sipping my cooling coffee. "Can't seem to shut my mind off." "Understandable." He rocked gently, the chair's rhythmic creaking oddly soothing. "Any particular worry? Or just the whole mess?" "All of it," I admitted. "But mostly, I keep thinking about Melissa, trying to understand why." Frank was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun rise over the distant ridge. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Some questions don't have answers, Evelyn. Some people just have a hole in their souls that nothing can fill. Not love, not money, not success. They keep taking and taking, thinking the next thing will finally be enough, but it never is." "She wasn't always like this," I protested weakly, though even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. "When she was little." "Kids are different," he acknowledged. "But somewhere along the way, she made choices. Bad ones. And each bad choice made the next one easier." "I should have been stricter," I murmured. "Set more boundaries." Frank shook his head. "Robert used to worry about the same thing. 'I'm too soft on her, Frank,' he'd say. Can't say no to those big eyes." But he also knew that at some point, a person has to make their own way, their own choices. Robert worried about her? This was news to me. My husband had always seemed confident in his parenting, certain that Melissa would find her way eventually. Sure he did, especially after Ethan was born, and she started leaving the boy with you more and more. He saw where things were headed. That's why he set up that account for the kid insurance, he called it. A lump formed in my throat. He never told me he was that concerned. Frank's eyes, faded blue but still sharp, met mine. He didn't want to worry you, and he hoped he was wrong. We all did. The sun had fully cleared the ridge now, casting long shadows across the porch. Inside the cabin, I could hear movement. Ethan was awake, probably already planning his adventures for the day. "What do I do now, Frank?" I asked, voicing the question that had been haunting me for days. "If they catch her, if she goes to prison, what do I tell Ethan?" "You tell him the truth," Frank said simply. "In words he can understand, with all the love in your heart. You tell him that his mother made bad choices, but that doesn't mean he has to. You tell him that he is loved and valued, and that you will always be there for him. And if she comes back?" I pressed. "If somehow she avoids prison, if she wants to be in his life again?" Frank's expression hardened. "Then you protect that boy. You set conditions, boundaries. You don't let her hurt him again." Before I could respond, the screen door banged open and Ethan burst onto the porch, Rex at his heels. "Grandma, Mr. Wheeler, can we go fishing again today? I want to catch a bigger fish than yesterday." His enthusiasm, his resilience, never ceased to amaze me. Despite everything he'd been through, he still found joy in simple pleasures, still approached each day with excitement. "Sure thing, buddy," Frank agreed, rising from his rocker. "Let me just get some breakfast in you first. Can't catch fish on an empty stomach." As they headed back inside, Frank chattering about pancakes and fishing lures, I lingered on the porch, watching the morning mist rise from the lake. Whatever happened with Melissa, whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. I would protect Ethan with everything I had. I would be the parent he needed, the advocate he deserved. I wouldn't fail him the way I had failed his mother. The day passed peacefully, with Frank teaching Ethan to clean the small trout he'd caught and me gathering wildflowers to brighten the cabin's rustic interior. By afternoon, the earlier sense of dread had faded, replaced by a tentative optimism. Perhaps we really were safe here. Perhaps Derek and Melissa were long gone, their scheme thwarted by an 8-year-old's courage and ingenuity. Then the secure phone rang. I was in the kitchen, slicing potatoes for dinner, when the shrill tone cut through the cabin's tranquility. My hands froze, the knife suspended over the cutting board. Only Officer Martinez had this number. With dread pooling in my stomach, I answered. "Hello, Mrs. Caldwell." Officer Martinez's voice was tense, professional. "We have a situation. Is your grandson nearby?" I glanced out the window to where Ethan and Frank were playing fetch with the dogs in the yard. "No, he's outside." "What's happened?" "Your daughter turned herself in an hour ago." The knife clattered to the counter. "Melissa? She's in custody." "Yes, ma'am. She came to the station voluntarily, quite distraught. She's claiming that Derek forced her to take the money, that he threatened her and Ethan if she didn't cooperate." My grip tightened on the phone. "And you believe her?" There was a pause. "We're investigating her claims." "But Mrs. Caldwell, that's not why I'm calling." Before she turned herself in, she made a phone call from a gas station outside town. "We have reason to believe she may have contacted Derek." The dread crystallized into fear, sharp and cold. "And you think she told him where we are?" "We don't know for certain," Officer Martinez admitted. "But given the timing and her emotional state, it's a possibility we can't ignore." I moved to the window, scanning the peaceful scene outside. Nothing seemed amiss, just Frank and Ethan laughing as Chief bounded after a stick. "What should we do?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "We're sending officers to your location now, but they're at least an hour out. In the meantime, I need you to secure the cabin. Lock all doors and windows. Stay away from open areas. And Mrs. Caldwell, if you have any means of self-defense available, now would be the time to discuss it with Mr. Wheeler." Self-defense. She was talking about weapons. Frank, being an ex-military man, undoubtedly had firearms in the cabin. "I understand," I said, my mouth dry. "How long until your officers arrive?" 90 minutes at best. The mountain roads slow them down. We've notified the county sheriff as well, but their nearest deputy is even further out. 90 minutes. An eternity if Derek was already on his way, or worse, already here. "Thank you," I managed. "We'll be careful. Call immediately if you see or hear anything suspicious," she instructed. "And Mrs. Caldwell, your daughter is in custody. She can't hurt you or Ethan anymore. Remember that." But as I hung up, I wasn't thinking about Melissa. I was thinking about Derek, the man who had convinced her to steal from her own mother, the man whose associates made threats and drove black trucks with tinted windows, the man who now potentially knew where to find us. I forced myself to move calmly to the front door. "Frank," I called, keeping my voice light. "Could you come inside for a minute? I need help with something." He looked up from the game, his expression shifting subtly as he read the urgency in my face. "Sure thing, Evelyn. Ethan, why don't you keep playing with the dogs? I'll be right inside." As Frank entered the cabin, I pulled him immediately into the kitchen, well away from the windows and Ethan's ears. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Melissa turned herself in," I told him, the words tumbling out in a rushed whisper. "But before she did, she made a call. The police think she might have told Derek where we are." Frank's weathered face hardened, his jaw setting in a grim line. "How long do we have?" "The police are on their way, but they're at least 90 minutes out." My hands trembled as I gripped the counter. "Officer Martinez said, she said to discuss self-defense options with you." He nodded once, his expression shifting into something I'd never seen before. The face of the soldier Robert had described, the man who had saved my husband's life in Vietnam. "I've got a shotgun in the closet and a handgun in my bedside table," he said matter-of-factly. "Both loaded. Do you know how to shoot?" I shook my head. Robert had owned guns, had tried to teach me once, but I'd been too nervous, too afraid of the power in my hands. "All right, then you stay with Ethan. Keep him calm, keep him quiet. I'll handle the rest." His eyes swept the cabin's interior, assessing. "If someone comes, you take the boy upstairs to the bathroom. No windows, solid door. Lock yourselves in, and don't come out until I call for you, or the police arrive. Understand?" I nodded, fear a metallic taste in my mouth. "Frank, if Derek comes here?" "He won't get past the front porch," Frank assured me, his voice steely. "Not while I'm breathing." The cold certainty in his tone should have frightened me, but instead, it was oddly comforting. Frank Wheeler, my husband's oldest friend, was prepared to defend us with his life. "We should get Ethan inside," I said, glancing toward the window where I could still see him throwing a stick for Rex. "Not yet," Frank cautioned. "If someone's watching, we don't want to tip them off that we know. Act normal. I'll get the guns ready, then we'll call him in for lunch or something." As Frank moved quietly toward the bedroom, I stood frozen in the kitchen, my mind racing. Was Derek already here, watching from the trees? Had Melissa really turned herself in? Or was this another manipulation, another lie? And what would I tell Ethan? How could I explain that we might be in danger, that we might have to hide, that the man his mother had chosen over him might be coming to hurt us? "Grandma?" His voice at the door startled me so badly, I nearly screamed. "Are you okay? You look weird." I forced a smile, kneeling down to his level.
"I'm fine, sweetheart."
"Just a little tired. Are you having fun with the dogs?" He nodded, but his eyes, so observant, so wise beyond his years, narrowed slightly. "Did something happen? You and Mr. Wheeler were talking all serious." There was no point in lying to him. He'd see through it immediately, and besides, he deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as he could handle. "Come sit with me for a minute," I said, leading him to the kitchen table. "I need to tell you something important." He climbed onto a chair, his expression solemn. "Is it about Mom?" "Yes," I admitted. "She's gone to the police station. She's talking to them about what happened with the money." His eyebrows shot up. "Is she in trouble?" "Yes, she is. But that's not what I'm worried about right now." I took his small hands in mine, looking directly into his eyes. "The police called to tell us that your mom might have told Derek where we're staying, and that means he might try to come here." I watched his face carefully, ready to soften the blow, to reassure him. But instead of fear, I saw a flash of something else, determination, maybe even anger. "He wants the money," Ethan said, his voice surprisingly steady. "The money I took back." "Probably," I agreed. "But the money is safe now, locked up where he can't get it. And the police are on their way here to protect us." "But they're not here yet," he observed, glancing toward the window.
"No, not yet."
"So Mr. Wheeler and I need you to be very brave and do exactly what we tell you, okay? If Derek comes before the police, we're going to go upstairs to the bathroom and lock the door while Mr. Wheeler handles things." "Handles things how?" Ethan asked, his gaze direct and unflinching. I hesitated, unsure how much to tell him. "Mr. Wheeler was a soldier, like Grandpa," I said finally. "He knows how to protect people." Ethan nodded, seeming to accept this. "I'm not scared," he declared, though the slight tremble in his voice betrayed him. "Derek's just a bully. Grandpa said bullies are cowards inside." My heart swelled with love and pride for this remarkable child. "Your grandfather was a very wise man," I told him. "And he'd be so proud of you right now." Frank returned, his posture relaxed, but his eyes alert and scanning. He'd changed into a flannel shirt. Untucked, I noticed, probably to hide the handgun I suspected was now at his waist. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, his voice deliberately casual. "I told Ethan that Derek might come," I said. and that we need to be ready to hide upstairs if he does. Frank nodded approvingly. Good man, he said to Ethan. Now, how about we get those fish you caught ready for lunch? No sense facing trouble on an empty stomach. The attempt at normalcy was surreal, preparing food while watching the windows, listening for car engines or footsteps in the woods. Frank kept the shotgun propped against the wall beside the door, within easy reach. The secure phone sat on the counter, charged and ready. And all the while, the minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Frank had just put the fish in the cast-iron skillet when Chief, who had been lying calmly by the door, suddenly raised his head. His ears perked forward, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Every muscle in my body tensed. Frank moved silently to the window, peering out from the side of the curtain. Car coming up the drive, he reported, his voice tight. Black truck. Can't see the driver. My heart seemed to stop. Derek. Get upstairs, Frank ordered, reaching for the shotgun.
Now.
Both of you. I grabbed Ethan's hand, but he pulled away.
Wait.
Rex is still outside. The old golden retriever had been napping on the porch, too tired to come in after the morning's activities. I'll get him, Frank promised. Go. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or the police. I pulled Ethan toward the stairs, my legs wooden with fear. Behind us, I heard Frank chambering a round in the shotgun, the sound sharp and final in the cabin's tense silence. The upstairs bathroom was small but solid, pine walls, a clawfoot tub, a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I locked the door behind us, then pushed the hamper against it for good measure. Grandma? Ethan whispered, his earlier bravado fading. What's happening? Can you hear anything? I strained to listen, but the bathroom was too far from the front of the house. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart and Ethan's frightened breathing. I don't know, sweetheart, I admitted, but Mr. Wheeler will protect us. And the police are on their way. He nodded, his face pale. Then he did something that broke my heart. He reached up and brushed a tear from my cheek that I hadn't even realized had fallen. Don't cry, Grandma, he said solemnly. I handled it once. I can handle it again. Before I could respond, a sound tore through the cabin, the unmistakable boom of the shotgun, followed by shouting, then another shot. Ethan flinched, pressing against me. I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him into the bathtub where the cast iron might offer some protection if bullets started flying. It's okay, I whispered, though it was clearly a lie. It's going to be okay. More shouting downstairs, then a crash of breaking glass. Chief's deep bark joined the cacophony, followed by a yelp of pain that might have been human or canine. And then, worst of all, a third shotgun blast and the sound of something heavy falling. Silence followed, so complete it seemed to press against my eardrums. Ethan trembled in my arms, his face buried against my shoulder. Frank, I called, my voice cracking. Frank, are you there? No answer. I don't know how long we huddled in that bathtub. Minutes that felt like hours, every creak of the old cabin making my heart leap into my throat. Ethan's breathing had steadied somewhat, but his grip on my sweater remained white-knuckled. Then, footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Grandma, Ethan whispered, his eyes wide with terror. Someone's coming. I pressed a finger to my lips, then reached for the only weapon available, a heavy ceramic soap dish. It wasn't much, but I'd use it if I had to. No one was going to hurt my grandson, not while I still breathed. The footsteps stopped outside the bathroom door. A gentle knock followed. Evelyn? Ethan? It's me. It's over. Frank's voice. But something was wrong. It was strained, almost breathless. Frank, I called. Are you all right? I'm hit, he admitted. But the bastard's worse off. Police are 3 minutes out. I can hear the sirens. You can unlock the door. I moved the hamper and turned the lock with shaking hands. When I pulled the door open, I gasped in horror. Frank stood in the hallway, one hand pressed to his side where blood seeped through his flannel shirt. His face was ashen, but his eyes were clear and alert. Frank, I cried, reaching for him. Oh my God, you're bleeding. Just a graze, he insisted, though the pallor of his face suggested otherwise. Got him in the leg and shoulder. He's not going anywhere. Derek? I asked, hardly daring to believe it was over. Frank nodded, grimacing as he leaned against the wall. And he wasn't alone. Had some skinny kid with him. Ran off into the woods when the shooting started. Probably that Carl fellow you mentioned. Ethan peered around me, his eyes widening at the sight of Frank's blood. Mr. Wheeler, you're hurt. I've had worse shaving, Frank assured him, though the joke fell flat given his obvious pain. Your dog's fine, by the way. Hiding under the porch last I saw. The sound of sirens grew louder, then stopped abruptly. Car doors slammed. Voices called out. Down here. Frank shouted, then winced at the effort. Suspect secured. Officer down. Boots pounded up the stairs, and suddenly the hallway was full of uniformed officers, their weapons drawn. One immediately went to Frank, easing him to a sitting position against the wall and examining his wound. Paramedics are right behind us, he assured Frank, then turned to me. Ma'am, are you and the boy all right? I nodded numbly. We're not hurt, but Derek is in custody, the officer confirmed. Gunshot wounds to the right leg and left shoulder, but he'll live to stand trial. It was over. Derek was caught. We were safe. The realization hit me like a physical blow, and my knees buckled. Another officer caught me, helping me to sit beside Frank. Easy there, he said kindly. It's been quite a morning for you folks. Ethan, showing that remarkable resilience once again, had already recovered enough to be concerned about others. Is Rex okay? He asked anxiously. And Chief. Both dogs are fine, the officer assured him. The big one, Chief, is standing guard over the suspect. Won't let anyone near him. Good dog you've got there, sir, he added to Frank. Frank managed a weak smile. Military trained. Never forgets his duty. More activity downstairs. Paramedics arriving, shouted instructions, the crackle of radios. Through it all, I sat beside Frank, holding his hand, overwhelmed with gratitude and guilt. You saved our lives, I told him, my voice breaking. You could have been killed. Wouldn't be the first time I took a bullet for Caldwell, he replied, his grip on my hand surprisingly strong despite his injury. Did the same for Robert in '68. Least I could do. The paramedics reached us then, gently moving me aside to attend to Frank. As they worked, one of the officers led Ethan and me downstairs, careful to steer us away from the front room where I presumed Derek still lay. Can I see Rex? Ethan asked, his small face serious. He gets scared of loud noises. The officer nodded, leading us to the kitchen door. He's out back. Your grandmother can see him from here while I take you out. Sure enough, Rex was in the yard, looking confused but unharmed. Chief stood nearby, his posture alert, still on duty even with officers swarming the scene. As Ethan ran to comfort his dog, Officer Martinez approached me, her expression grave. Mrs. Caldwell, she greeted me. I'm relieved to see you and your grandson are unharmed. Thanks to Frank, I said, watching as the paramedics carefully carried him out on a stretcher. Will he be all right? The wound looks worse than it is, she assured me. The bullet grazed his ribs, painful, but not life-threatening. He's lucky.
Lucky.
The words seemed inadequate for what had just happened, for what could have happened. And Derek? I asked, unable to stop myself from glancing toward the front room. He'll survive, she said, her tone making it clear she considered this a mixed blessing. He's already talking, trying to make a deal. Claims your daughter masterminded the whole thing, that she forced him to come here. Anger flared in my chest. And you believe him? No, she said simply. We have evidence suggesting otherwise. Text messages, hotel receipts, statements from his associates. This was his operation from the beginning. And Melissa? Is she really in custody? Officer Martinez's expression softened slightly. Yes, she is. She's been charged with theft and conspiracy, though her cooperation may help her case. She seems genuinely remorseful. Remorseful? After stealing our money, abandoning her son, and very nearly getting us killed, she was remorseful. The word tasted bitter in my mind. I'd like to speak with her, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. Face to face. The officer hesitated. That can be arranged, but it might be better to wait until things settle down. You and your grandson have been through a traumatic experience. I need to look her in the eye, I insisted. I need to understand why. Before she could respond, Ethan returned with Rex, the old dog pressed protectively against his side. Is Mr. Wheeler going to be okay? He asked, his eyes serious. Yes, sweetheart, I assured him, kneeling to his level. The doctors will fix him up good as new. He nodded, processing this. And Derek? Is he going to jail? Yes, Officer Martinez answered, her tone gentle but firm. He's going to jail for a long time. He can't hurt you or your grandmother anymore. What about Mom? Ethan asked, the question I'd been dreading. Is she going to jail too? Officer Martinez glanced at me, clearly uncertain how to answer. This was my responsibility, my burden to bear. Your mom made some very bad choices, I told him, taking his hands in mine. And yes, she might have to go to jail for a while. But she turned herself in, which means she knew what she did was wrong. That's a start. His face remained solemn, those old soul eyes searching mine. Can I see her? Before she goes to jail? The question pierced my heart. After everything Melissa had done, all the pain she'd caused, Ethan still loved her, still wanted to see her. It was the purest, most innocent kind of love, and the most heartbreaking. If you want to, I said carefully. But only if it's safe, and only if you're really sure. He nodded, his decision made. I'm sure. I need to ask her why.
Why?
The question that had been haunting me since this nightmare began. Why would a mother steal from her own family? Why would she abandon her own child? Why would she choose a criminal over the people who loved her most? We'll arrange it, Officer Martinez promised, her eyes full of compassion. But for now, we need to get you both somewhere safe. This is still a crime scene. The next few hours passed in a blur. Statements given, evidence collected, Derek and Carl, who had indeed been the second man, transported to the hospital under guard. Frank was taken to the same hospital, though I was assured he would be kept well away from the criminals. By evening, Ethan and I found ourselves in a hotel room in the nearest town, under police protection while they processed the cabin and ensured no other threats remained. Rex lay on the floor between our beds, occasionally lifting his head at unfamiliar sounds before settling back down. Ethan had been quiet since we left the cabin, speaking only when spoken to, his usual curiosity subdued. Now, as I tucked him into the hotel bed, he finally broke his silence. Grandma, he said, his voice small in the dim room. Did Mom really help Derek try to hurt us? I sat on the edge of his bed, struggling to find the right words. I don't know for sure, sweetheart. The police are still figuring everything out. But she told him where we were, he persisted. She knew he would come. There was no point denying it. Yes, I think she did. But people sometimes do terrible things when they're scared or desperate. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it might help explain it. He was quiet for a long moment, absently stroking Rex's head where the old dog had rested it on the edge of the bed. I used to think she was the prettiest, smartest mom in the whole world, he said finally, his voice thick with unshed tears. Even when she yelled at me or forgot to come home, I thought if I was good enough, she'd stay. My heart shattered for what felt like the 100th time that day. I gathered him into my arms, holding him close as the tears finally came, great, heaving sobs that shook his small frame. It's not your fault, I whispered fiercely into his hair. None of this is your fault. Your mother's choices are her own, and they have nothing to do with how good or lovable you are. Then why didn't she want me? He cried, the words muffled against my shoulder. Why did she leave me? What could I say? What possible explanation could ease this primal wound of abandonment? Some people, I began slowly, are so broken inside that they can't love properly, not even the people they should love most. It's like they're looking through a window that's all cracked and dirty. They can't see clearly what's right in front of them, how precious it is, how lucky they are to have it. Like Mom couldn't see me? He asked, pulling back to look at me with tear-stained cheeks. Yes, I said, gently wiping his tears. She couldn't see the amazing, brave, brilliant boy you are. But that's her loss, Ethan. Her terrible, tragic loss. He considered this, hiccuping slightly as the sobs subsided. Do you think she'll ever be able to see? To fix her window? The hope in his voice was almost unbearable. I wanted to protect him from further disappointment, but I couldn't bring myself to extinguish that fragile spark. I don't know, I admit. 2 days had passed since the shooting at the cabin. Frank was recovering well, already complaining about hospital food and demanding to be released. Derek and Carl were both in custody, facing multiple charges that would likely keep them in prison for decades. The stolen money had been officially returned to my accounts, minus a small portion being held as evidence. And now, the moment I'd been both dreading and strangely anticipating had arrived, a face-to-face meeting with my daughter. You don't have to do this, I reminded Ethan as we approached the visitation room. We can still change our minds. He shook his head, his jaw set in that determined way that reminded me so much of Robert. I want to see her. I need to. The guard stopped at a metal door, swiping his keycard. 30 minutes, he reminded us. No physical contact except at the beginning and end of the visit. I'll be right outside if you need anything. The door swung open to reveal a small room with a table and 4 chairs. And there, already seated on the far side, was Melissa. My first thought was that she looked terrible, hair lank and unwashed, dark circles under her eyes, orange jumpsuit hanging loosely on her frame. My second thought, following immediately and bringing a wave of shame, was, good. Let her suffer a fraction of what she's put us through. Mom, she said, rising as we entered. Her eyes went immediately to Ethan, widening with what looked like genuine emotion. Ethan. Oh my God. Baby, are you okay? Ethan stopped just inside the door, his earlier determination faltering at the sight of his mother in prison garb. I squeezed his hand reassuringly, letting him know it was okay to take his time. We're allowed to hug at the beginning, I told him quietly. If you want to. He hesitated, then released my hand and walked slowly to his mother. She knelt, opening her arms, and after another moment's pause, he stepped into her embrace. I watched as she clutched him tightly, her face buried in his hair, shoulders shaking with what appeared to be genuine sobs. Ethan stood stiffly in her arms, neither returning the hug nor pulling away. I'm so sorry, she wept, pulling back to look at his face. I'm so sorry, baby. I never meant for any of this to happen. Ethan said nothing, his expression carefully neutral. After a moment, he stepped back and returned to my side. Hello, Melissa, I said, taking a seat at the table and motioning for Ethan to do the same. You look well. She laughed bitterly, wiping tears with the back of her hand. No, I don't. I look like hell and we both know it. Yes, I agreed, abandoning the pretense of politeness. You do. She sat across from us, hands folded on the table. Up close, I could see that her fingernails were bitten to the quick, her knuckles raw and red. Signs of stress or genuine remorse. I couldn't tell. I don't even know where to begin, she said after an uncomfortable silence. What I did, there's no excuse. No, I agreed. There isn't. But Ethan deserves an explanation, if you can give him one. Her eyes flicked to her son, then back to me. Could I talk to him alone? Just for a few minutes? Absolutely not, I said firmly. You lost that privilege when you abandoned him and tried to steal his future. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. I never meant to abandon him. I was coming back. After you'd spent all our money? After you and Derek had lived it up in Mexico? And what would have been left for Ethan then? I don't know, she cried, slamming her hands on the table. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. Derek said, I repeated flatly. Always someone else making your decisions, isn't it, Melissa? Always someone else to blame. Her face flushed with anger, then crumpled. You're right, she whispered. You're right, and I hate it. I hate myself for what I've done. Self-pity isn't an explanation, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan asked to come here because he has questions. If you care about him at all, you'll answer them honestly. She nodded, visibly pulling herself together. Okay. Anything. Ask me anything, Ethan. Ethan, who had been watching this exchange with those solemn eyes of his, straightened in his chair. Why did you leave me? He asked, his voice small but clear. Don't you love me anymore? The directness of the question seemed to catch Melissa off guard. She blinked rapidly, fresh tears forming. Oh, baby, of course I love you, she insisted. I've always loved you. This wasn't about you at all. Then why, he pressed. Why did you steal Grandma's money and leave me behind? She sighed, running a hand through her tangled hair. It's complicated, Ethan. Derek, he can be very persuasive. He made it sound so easy, so perfect. Take the money, start over somewhere new, build a better life. Without me, Ethan stated flatly.
No.
I mean, not forever. The plan was to get settled first, then send for you. I couldn't hold back a derisive snort. And you believed that? That a man who would steal from an elderly woman and an 8-year-old child would suddenly develop a conscience and want to raise someone else's son. She glared at me. You don't know him like I do. He has good qualities, too. Like what? I challenged. His skill at manipulation? His willingness to threaten children? Or perhaps his talent for getting others to do his dirty work while he reaps the rewards. He loves me, she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. He's the only one who ever really saw me for who I am. And who is that, exactly? I asked, genuinely curious despite my anger. Because the daughter I raised wouldn't steal from her own mother. Wouldn't abandon her own son. So who are you, Melissa? Who have you become? She had no answer, her gaze dropping to her folded hands. Did you tell Derek where we were? Ethan asked suddenly, his voice stronger now. Did you know he was going to hurt us? Melissa's head snapped up, her eyes wide with what looked like genuine horror.
No.
I mean, yes, I told him where you were, but I never believed he would actually hurt you. Then why did you tell him? I demanded. What did you think would happen? She swallowed hard. He said he just wanted to talk, to explain his side of things. He said you'd stolen his money. I took back Grandma's money, Ethan interrupted, a flash of anger crossing his face. The money you stole, it wasn't yours or Derek's. Melissa stared at her son, bewilderment replacing the guilt in her expression. What do you mean you took it back? How could you possibly? For the first time since we'd entered the room, a small, proud smile curved my lips. Your son is quite resourceful. He found Derek's notes about the account where you'd stashed the stolen money, and he transferred it all back, with some help from your father's old friend at the bank. Dad's friend? She repeated, looking lost. What friend? Mr. Harrington. Ethan supplied. Grandpa set up a secret account for me before he died. In case of emergencies. Understanding dawned on Melissa's face, followed quickly by disbelief. Dad knew? He knew I would, that I might. Your father saw what I refused to see, I said quietly. He knew you were troubled, that you made bad choices. He wanted to protect Ethan from those choices. She seemed to shrink in her chair, the reality of her father's foresight clearly devastating. I have problems, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I know that, but I never thought I'd end up here. I never thought I'd hurt my own family this way. But you did, Ethan said, his voice surprisingly gentle. You hurt us. You scared us. Mr. Wheeler got shot because of you. Melissa's head jerked up.
What?
Frank was shot? Is he okay? He'll recover, I told her. No thanks to Derek, who would have killed all of us if Frank hadn't stopped him. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, she said, the words muffled. I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this. I wanted to be happy, to feel special and important and free. At whose expense? I asked quietly. Your happiness was worth more than your son's security? Than your mother's retirement? Than an old man's life? She had no answer, just continued to weep silently into her hands. Ethan watched her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he asked the question I knew had been weighing on him most heavily. Are you coming back when you get out of jail? Do you want to be my mom again? Melissa lowered her hands, her tear-stained face a mask of misery. I want to, she whispered. But I don't know if I can. I don't know if I deserve to be your mom. That's not an answer, I said sharply. He deserves the truth, Melissa. Not more vague promises you don't intend to keep. She straightened, meeting her son's gaze directly, for perhaps the first time in years. The truth is, I'm a mess, Ethan. I make terrible choices. I hurt people I love. I'm weak and selfish, and I don't know how to be the mother you deserve. You could learn, he suggested, that impossible hope still alive in his voice. People can change, right, Grandma? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. They can, Melissa agreed. And I want to change. I'm going to really try this time. But it's going to take a long time and a lot of work. And until I'm better, until I'm someone you can count on. She drew a shaky breath. Until then, you're better off with Grandma. It was perhaps the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. And despite everything, despite the anger and betrayal still burning in my chest, I felt a flicker of something dangerously close to hope. So you're not coming back? Ethan clarified, his face serious. Not for a long time? Melissa shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Not for a long time, baby. I need to get help. Real help, not just promises. And I need to pay for what I've done. He nodded, processing this. Okay, he said finally. I understand. The maturity in those two simple words was heartbreaking. No child should have to understand why his mother was choosing prison and rehabilitation over him. No child should have to accept abandonment with such quiet dignity. Time's almost up. IV2 bullet operator latest copy published said, glancing at my watch. Is there anything else you want to say to your mother, Ethan? He thought for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I made this for you, he said, sliding it across the table. So you don't forget what you promised. Melissa unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was a crayon drawing, simple but powerful. A stick figure of a woman standing alone, separated by a jagged line from two other figures, clearly meant to be Ethan and me. Above the drawing, in careful block letters, he had written, Get better and come back when you're ready. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I won't forget, she whispered. I promise. As touching as the moment was, I couldn't help but think of all the other promises Melissa had made and broken over the years. But for Ethan's sake, I kept that thought to myself. We should go, I said gently. The guard will be back any minute. Ethan nodded and stood. Goodbye, Mom, he said, his voice steady. I hope you get better. Melissa rose shakily, coming around the table to kneel before him. Can I have one more hug before you go? He nodded, stepping into her embrace with less hesitation this time. She held him tightly, whispering something in his ear that I couldn't hear. Whatever it was, it made him nod against her shoulder. When they separated, Melissa turned to me. Mom, she began, then faltered. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but will you take care of him? Love him enough for both of us. The request was so unnecessary it almost made me laugh. Take care of him? I'd been doing that since the day he was born. He's my grandson, I said simply. Of course I will. She nodded, wiping her eyes. And will you tell me how he's doing? Send pictures maybe? I don't want to miss everything. This request was harder to accept. Part of me wanted to deny her, to make her feel the full weight of her abandonment. But looking at Ethan's hopeful face, I knew I couldn't be that cruel. We'll see, I said, neither promising nor refusing. It depends on a lot of things. Before she could respond, the guard opened the door. Time's up, he announced. Ethan took my hand, and without looking back, we walked out of the detention center and into the bright spring sunshine. Neither of us spoke until we were in the car, pulling away from the imposing building. You did very well in there, I told him, glancing in the rearview mirror at his solemn face. "I'm proud of you." "Do you think she meant it?" he asked quietly. "About getting better?" I sighed, considering my answer carefully. "I think she wants to mean it," I said finally. "Whether she follows through, that's something only time will tell." He nodded, accepting this ambiguity with the same maturity he'd shown throughout this ordeal. "Grandma?" "What Mom whispered to me. She said she was sorry she couldn't be the mom I deserved, but that you always were." My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. After everything Melissa had done, she'd still managed to say exactly the right thing to her son in that final moment. "Well," I managed, blinking back tears, "we're going to be just fine, you and I. We make a good team." "The best," he agreed, a small smile finally breaking through his serious expression. "Can we go see Mr. Wheeler at the hospital now?" "Absolutely," I said, turning onto the highway. "And then maybe we can talk about what comes next for us." "What do you mean?" he asked, curiosity lighting his eyes. "Well, I'm not sure we want to go back to the old house right away," I explained. "Too many memories, too many people asking questions. I thought maybe we could look for somewhere new, somewhere we could start fresh." "Like our own adventure cabin?" he suggested, perking up at the idea. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "Maybe not quite that rustic, but somewhere with trees and space for Rex to run. Somewhere quiet where we can both heal." "I'd like that," he said thoughtfully. "But can we still visit Mr. Wheeler sometimes? And can I still go to the same school with my friends?" "Of course," I assured him. "We won't go far. Just far enough to leave the worst of this behind us." As we drove toward the hospital, I felt a strange peace settling over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still legal matters to resolve, trauma to process, a new life to build. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I believed we would be okay. My daughter had betrayed us in the worst possible way. But in doing so, she had inadvertently given us a gift: the truth. No more illusions, no more excuses, no more enabling. Just clarity, painful but necessary. And my grandson, my brave, brilliant, beautiful grandson, had shown me what real courage looked like, what real love looked like. He would carry scars from this ordeal, no doubt. But he would also carry strength, resilience, and the knowledge that he was loved unconditionally. As for me, I had lost a daughter, but gained a deeper relationship with my grandson. I had lost my naivety, but gained wisdom. I had lost my comfortable illusions, but gained something far more valuable: the truth. And the truth, as they say, shall set you free. 6 months later, the courthouse steps seemed to stretch endlessly before me, each one taking me closer to a moment I'd both dreaded and anticipated for half a year. Ethan's hand was warm in mine, his new suit crisp and formal against his growing frame. "You ready for this?" I asked him, pausing at the base of the steps. He nodded, his expression serious but calm. "I've been practicing what to say, just like Mr. Harrington showed me." James Harrington, Robert's banker friend who had helped Ethan recover the stolen money, had become a fixture in our lives over the past months. He'd helped us navigate the legal system, prepare for today's testimony, and even find our new home, a modest cottage on the outskirts of town, far enough from gossip but close enough for Ethan to continue at his school. "You don't have to be perfect," I reminded Ethan. "Just tell the truth, exactly as you remember it." "I know," he said with the confidence of a child who had already faced his worst fears and survived. "I'm not scared." And looking at him, I believed it. The past 6 months had changed him, changed both of us. The nightmares that had plagued him after the shooting at the cabin had gradually subsided. The wariness in his eyes when meeting new people had softened. The desperate hope that his mother would magically transform into the parent he deserved had given way to a more realistic acceptance of who she was and wasn't. We climbed the steps together, entering the imposing courthouse with its marble floors and echoing halls. Frank Wheeler was waiting for us in the lobby, leaning slightly on a cane, but otherwise fully recovered from his gunshot wound. "There they are," he called, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "The stars of today's show." Ethan ran to him, stopping just short of a hug and deference to Frank's still healing ribs. "Mr. Wheeler, you came, wouldn't miss it for the world," Frank assured him, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Not every day I get to see justice served to the yahoo who shot me." I embraced Frank carefully, grateful beyond words for his continued presence in our lives. After his release from the hospital, he'd visited often, teaching Ethan to fish in the creek behind our new home, sharing stories of Robert that made us laugh and cry in equal measure. "How are you feeling?" I asked, noting the new lines of pain around his eyes despite his cheerful demeanor. "Fit as a fiddle," he insisted, though the stiffness in his movements belied the claim. "Doc says I'll be dancing by Christmas." "Grandma's been practicing her dancing too," Ethan piped up with the innocence of a child who doesn't realize he's revealing secrets. "She dances in the kitchen when she thinks I'm not looking." Frank's eyebrows shot up, a teasing glint in his eye. "Is that so? Well, perhaps you'll save a dance for an old soldier come Christmas, Evelyn." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, as ridiculous as that was at my age. "Perhaps I will," I said, surprising myself with the admission. "If you're healed enough by then." Before Frank could respond, our lawyer approached, a stern-faced woman named Catherine Benson who had taken our case pro bono after hearing about Ethan's ordeal. "Mrs. Caldwell, Ethan." She greeted us crisply. "Are we ready? The proceedings will begin in 15 minutes, and I'd like to review a few points before we go in." The next hour passed in a blur of legal formalities. The courtroom was more crowded than I'd expected, filled with reporters, curious locals, and a surprising number of supporters, neighbors, church members, even some of Ethan's teachers, all there to witness the culmination of the scandal that had rocked our small town. Derek sat at the defense table, hollow-eyed and defeated in his prison jumpsuit. His flashy defense attorney, paid for by whom, I wondered, leaned close, whispering urgently in his ear. He didn't look our way once, though I caught his attorney studying Ethan with calculating eyes. Melissa was not present. She had already pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for her testimony against Derek, receiving a 5-year sentence with possibility of parole after 3. Her cooperation, combined with her genuine remorse and lack of prior convictions, had earned her some leniency from the court. I had mixed feelings about her sentence. Part of me felt it was too light for the devastation she'd caused. Another part recognized that a longer imprisonment would only harm Ethan further. He still loved his mother, still hoped for her redemption. Who was I to take that hope from him? When Ethan was called to testify, my heart nearly stopped. He looked so small walking to the witness stand, his shoulders squared with determination despite the fear I knew he must be feeling. But his voice, when he began to speak, was clear and steady. "Please state your name for the record," the prosecutor instructed. "Ethan Robert Caldwell," he replied, his voice carrying through the hushed courtroom. "And how old are you, Ethan?" 9 years old, ma'am. My birthday was last month." A murmur ran through the gallery, a reminder of just how young he was to be facing such adult circumstances.
"Thank you, Ethan.
"Now, I'm going to ask you some questions about what happened back in April. Is that okay?" He nodded, then remembering the instructions, said clearly, "Yes, ma'am." What followed was the most extraordinary testimony I had ever witnessed. Ethan described, in meticulous detail, how he had overheard Derek and Melissa planning to steal our savings. How he had photographed Derek's notebook with account information. How he had contacted James Harrington using the card his grandfather had given him, and together they had transferred the stolen money back to a secure account. "And why did you do this, Ethan?" the prosecutor asked gently. "Why not tell your grandmother what you'd overheard?" Ethan glanced at me, his expression serious. "Because Mom had already taken the money by then. And I knew Grandma would be really sad and worried. I wanted to fix it before she found out, so she wouldn't have to be afraid." The prosecutor nodded, letting the simple, powerful statement hang in the air. "No further questions, Your Honor." Derek's attorney rose, approaching the witness stand with what he clearly thought was a kind smile but came across as condescending. "Ethan, that's quite a story," he began, his tone just shy of mocking. "But I'm a little confused about some details." You're saying that at 8 years old, you understood banking transactions well enough to move hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ethan didn't flinch. Mr. Harrington helped me. But I understood what was happening. My grandpa taught me about money since I was little. I see. And you expect us to believe that your grandfather, before his death, somehow knew his daughter would steal from him, so he set up this elaborate contingency plan. I tensed, ready to object, but Catherine Benson was already on her feet. Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative and speculative. Sustained, the judge agreed. Counsel, please remember you're questioning a child witness. The defense attorney changed tactics. Ethan, isn't it possible you're confused about what you heard? Maybe your mother and Mr. Lewis were just talking about moving their own money. Ethan shook his head firmly.
No, sir.
They said Grandma's retirement and the kids' college fund. That's me.
They laughed about it.
Derek said Grandma would never miss it because she had the house. The attorney's expression tightened. And you're absolutely certain about this conversation? You couldn't have misunderstood or misremembered. I remember it exactly, Ethan said, his voice unwavering. I wrote it down right after they left my room, so I wouldn't forget. I can show you my notebook if you want. This was news to me. I glanced at Catherine, who looked equally surprised but quickly recovered, making a note on her legal pad. The defense attorney seemed momentarily thrown. That won't be necessary, he said, his confidence visibly faltering. No further questions. As Ethan stepped down from the witness stand, his eyes found mine. I gave him a thumbs up, mouthing perfect as he made his way back to his seat beside me. You are amazing, I whispered as he settled in. I didn't know about the notebook. He shrugged, a small smile playing at his lips. I watch a lot of crime shows, remember? The detective always writes down clues. I had to stifle a laugh, marveling once again at this remarkable child who continued to surprise me at every turn. My own testimony was considerably less dramatic, though equally damning for Derek. I described finding our accounts emptied, Melissa's disappearance, and the threatening visit from Carl. I recounted the phone call from Melissa claiming the money had been stolen from her and Derek, and the subsequent attack at Frank's cabin. Throughout my testimony, Derek stared at the table, his shoulders hunched in defeat. He knew as well as everyone else in that courtroom that his fate was sealed. When Frank took the stand, his military bearing evident despite his injury, the final nail was driven into Derek's coffin. Frank described, in precise, unemotional terms, how Derek and Carl had arrived at the cabin with weapons drawn, how Derek had fired the first shot, how Frank had defended us with his legally registered shotgun. He said, and I quote, "Where's the money, old man? Where's the kid?" Frank testified, his voice steady. When I told him to leave my property, he fired. The bullet grazed my side. I returned fire, hitting him in the leg and shoulder. At no point did he ask to speak with Mrs. Caldwell or the boy. At no point did he indicate he was there for any purpose other than retrieval of the money and possibly the child. By the time the defense presented their case, a weak argument that Melissa had been the mastermind and Derek merely her pawn, the outcome seemed inevitable. The jury was out for less than 2 hours before returning with a guilty verdict on all counts: conspiracy to commit grand theft, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, and a host of lesser charges. Derek's face remained impassive as the judge sentenced him to 25 years without possibility of parole. Only when the bailiffs moved to lead him away did he finally look in our direction, his eyes finding Ethan with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been grudging respect. "The kid," he said, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. "The kid really did handle it." A murmur ran through the gallery, but Ethan's expression never changed. He simply watched, solemn and steady, as the man who had tried to destroy our lives was led away in chains. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered on the steps, cameras flashing as we emerged into the afternoon sunlight. I tried to shield Ethan from their questions, but to my surprise, he stepped forward, his chin raised. "Ethan Caldwell," one reporter called, thrusting a microphone toward him. "How does it feel to know you single-handedly foiled a major theft?" "I didn't do it by myself," he said clearly. My grandpa helped by making the secret account. Mr. Harrington helped with the money. Mr. Wheeler protected us. And my grandma is the bravest person I know. The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, brought tears to my eyes. The reporters pressed closer, eager for more of this remarkable child's perspective, but Catherine deftly moved us toward the waiting car. "That's all for today," she announced firmly. "The family requests privacy as they begin to heal from this ordeal." As we drove away from the courthouse, Ethan leaned against me in the back seat, suddenly looking every bit the 9-year-old boy he was, tired, overwhelmed, but undeniably triumphant. "It's really over, isn't it?" he asked, stifling a yawn. "Yes, sweetheart," I assured him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "It's really over." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. The legal battle might be finished, but the emotional aftermath would continue for years to come. Ethan would need therapy to process his abandonment, his role in the criminal case, the violence he had witnessed. I would need to learn how to parent all over again, to balance protection with independence, to help him navigate the complicated feelings he would inevitably have about his mother. And Melissa? She remained the question mark in our future. Would prison change her? Would she emerge in 3 or 5 years truly remorseful, truly committed to rebuilding her relationship with her son? Or would she fall back into old patterns, breaking Ethan's heart all over again? Only time would tell. But for today, justice had been served. Derek would pay for his crimes. The money was safe. And most importantly, Ethan and I were free to begin building our new life together. 1 year later, "Grandma, they're here." Ethan's excited voice carried through our cottage, followed by the thunder of his footsteps down the stairs. I smiled, giving the dining room table one final inspection. The good china was set, the silverware polished, the centerpiece of fall flowers arranged just so. It wasn't often we had formal dinner guests, and I wanted everything to be perfect. "Coming," I called, smoothing my dress and taking a deep breath. The past year had been one of healing and growth, of finding our new normal in the wake of the trial's publicity. We had become minor celebrities in Liberty Creek, the grandmother and grandson who had outwitted criminals and reclaimed their stolen fortune. The attention had been uncomfortable at first, but had gradually faded as newer scandals took precedence in the town's gossip mill. Ethan had flourished in our new home, his natural resilience helping him bounce back from the trauma. The therapy sessions, which he'd initially resisted, had proven invaluable in helping him process his feelings about his mother's betrayal and imprisonment. He still had nightmares occasionally, still asked difficult questions about Melissa's choices, but overall, he was thriving, excelling in school, making new friends, rediscovering the simple joys of being a child. As for me, I had found unexpected strength in my new role as Ethan's legal guardian. The court had officially granted me full custody 6 months after the trial, with Melissa's blessing. I had worried about being too old, too set in my ways to raise a young boy, but the reality had proven far less daunting than I'd feared. We made a good team, as I told him that day outside the detention center.
The best.
I opened the front door to find Frank on our porch, a bottle of wine in one hand and a wrapped package in the other. He had abandoned the cane months ago, though he still moved with a slight stiffness when the weather turned cold. "Evening, Evelyn," he greeted me, leaning in to kiss my cheek, a gesture that had become comfortable, even welcome, over the past year of shared meals and quiet conversations. "Something smells delicious." "Pot roast," I told him, taking the wine. "Ethan's favorite." "Mine too," he said with a wink, stepping inside. "Where is the birthday boy anyway?" "Right here," Ethan announced, bounding into the entryway with Rex at his heels. The old dog had slowed considerably in the past year but still followed Ethan everywhere, devoted as ever. "Is that for me?" he asked, eyeing the package. Frank laughed, handing it over.
"Maybe.
Or maybe it's for your grandmother. You'll have to open it to find out." Before Ethan could tear into the wrapping, another car pulled into our driveway, James Harrington's sleek sedan. The banker had become a regular visitor as well, joining us for Sunday dinners and occasional fishing trips with Ethan. "Mr. Harrington's here," Ethan exclaimed, setting the package carefully on the hall table. "I'll go help him with his stuff." As he darted back outside, Frank turned to me with a warm smile. "He seems happy," he observed. "More like a regular kid every time I see him." "He is," I agreed, leading the way to the living room. "The therapist says he's making remarkable progress. She credits his strong support system." "She means you," Frank said, settling onto the sofa. "You've done an amazing job with him, Evelyn. Robert would be proud." The mention of my late husband no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Instead, there was a gentle warmth, a sense of his continued presence in our lives through the grandson who shared his quiet strength and moral clarity. "I hope so," I said softly. "I think about him every day, watching Ethan grow. He looks more like Robert all the time, that serious expression, the way he tilts his head when he's thinking." Frank nodded, his eyes understanding. "Robert always said Ethan got the best of both of you, your compassion, his determination." Before I could respond, the front door opened again, and Ethan led James Harrington into the living room. The banker carried a large gift bag and a folder tucked under his arm. "Happy birthday, young man," he said to Ethan, setting the gift bag on the coffee table. 10 years old, double digits. That's a milestone worth celebrating." "Thank you, sir," Ethan replied, his manners impeccable despite his obvious excitement about the presents. "Grandma made pot roast, and there's chocolate cake for dessert." "Sounds perfect," James said, then turned to me. "Evelyn, you're looking well. The country air agrees with you." I accepted the compliment with a smile, noting how much more comfortable I'd become with such remarks over the past year. Grief and stress had aged me prematurely after Robert's death, but the peaceful months in our cottage had restored something of my former self, or perhaps created something new, a woman stronger and more resilient than before. "Dinner's almost ready," I told them. "Ethan, would you help me bring the food to the table?" As we moved into the dining room, I couldn't help but marvel at how my life had changed. A year ago, I had been devastated by betrayal, terrified for our future, uncertain if we would ever feel safe again. Now, our home was filled with laughter and friendship, with the simple joy of a birthday celebration. The dinner was a success, good food, better company, and Ethan beaming at the head of the table as we recounted stories of his grandfather and celebrated the remarkable young man he was becoming. When the cake was served, complete with 10 blazing candles, I felt my heart swell with a happiness I had thought might never return after Melissa's betrayal. "Make a wish," I told him as he prepared to blow out the candles. He closed his eyes, his face scrunched in concentration, then leaned forward and extinguished all 10 flames in a single breath. We applauded, and he grinned, accepting the first slice of cake with undisguised delight. Later, as he opened his presents, a fishing rod from Frank, a telescope from James, and a new bicycle from me, I noticed James glancing at his watch with uncharacteristic nervousness. "Is everything all right?" I asked him quietly while Ethan was absorbed in examining his new telescope. Yes, he assured me, though his expression remained tense. "It's just there's one more surprise for Ethan. I arranged it, but I'm not entirely sure how you'll feel about it." Before I could ask what he meant, there was a soft knock at the front door. Rex lifted his head, ears perked, but didn't bark, a good sign that whoever was there wasn't a stranger. "I'll get it," Ethan offered, setting down the telescope and heading for the door. I followed, a strange apprehension building in my chest. James rose as well, the folder now in his hands, his expression a mixture of concern and resolve. When Ethan opened the door, the world seemed to stop for a heartbeat. Because there, standing on our porch in a simple blue dress, her hair shorter and her face thinner but unmistakably herself, was Melissa. "Mom," Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, disbelief and joy warring in his expression. "Happy birthday, Ethan," she said softly. I got permission to visit. Just for today. If that's okay." I felt rooted to the spot, a tumult of emotions churning inside me. Shock, confusion, anger, and beneath it all, a reluctant flicker of hope. Melissa looked different, Not just physically, but in her bearing, her expression. The frenetic energy that had always surrounded her was gone, replaced by a quiet, almost humble presence. Ethan looked back at me, his eyes wide with uncertainty. "Grandma, is it okay if Mom comes in?" The question broke my paralysis. This was Ethan's day, Ethan's moment to decide. And despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal, Melissa was still his mother. "Of course," I said, stepping forward.
"Come in, Melissa."
"We're just having cake." The relief on her face was palpable as she stepped over the threshold. "Thank you," she said, her eyes meeting mine with genuine gratitude. "I know I have no right to be here, but it's my birthday present to Ethan," James interjected smoothly, holding up the folder. "Special permission from the parole board, just for today. Ms. Caldwell has been a model prisoner, participating in every rehabilitation program available. Her counselors believe this supervised visit would be beneficial for both her and Ethan." Supervised. The word registered slowly. "You're staying?" asked James. He nodded. "I'm the court-appointed supervisor for this visit. I'll remain present the entire time, and Ms. Caldwell will return to the facility by 9 o'clock. I glanced at Frank, who had risen from the sofa and moved to stand supportively at my side. His expression was neutral, but I could read the concern in his eyes. Concern for me, for Ethan, for the fragile peace we had built. "It's just a visit," Melissa said quietly, seeming to understand our reservations. "I'm not asking for anything more. I wanted to see him on his birthday. To tell him I'm working hard to get better. To show him I meant what I said." The words echoed back to me from that day in the detention center. I'm going to try, really try this time. Had she kept that promise? Was this new Melissa genuine, or just another act, another manipulation? But looking at her now, at the genuine emotion in her eyes as she gazed at her son, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't expected: forgiveness. Not complete, not unconditional, but a beginning. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice stronger now. "Do you want some cake? Grandma made chocolate, your favorite." The simple question, the easy acceptance of her presence, brought tears to Melissa's eyes. "I'd love some cake," she managed, "if it's okay with everyone." And so our birthday celebration continued, with the addition of the last person I would have expected to welcome into our home. Melissa sat quietly at the table, accepting a small piece of cake, watching with visible emotion as Ethan showed her his presents. "The telescope is amazing," she told him. "You always loved the stars, even when you were tiny. Remember how I used to hold you up to the window to see the moon?" "I remember," he said, his smile cautious but genuine. "Grandma and I go stargazing a lot now. Our new house is away from the town lights, so you can see everything really clear." "That sounds wonderful," she said softly. "I'm glad you're happy here." As they talked, I watched for signs of the old Melissa, the manipulative charm, the subtle undermining, the self-centered redirecting of attention. But they never came. Instead, she listened more than she spoke, asked questions about Ethan's life, and several times expressed genuine gratitude to me for taking such good care of him. When she finally presented her own gift, a handmade book of stories she had written in prison, illustrated with surprisingly skilled drawings, I felt the last of my resistance crumbling. This was not the same woman who had stolen our money and abandoned her son. This was someone new, someone fighting to become better. "It's getting late," James said gently, as the clock approached 8. "We should start saying our goodbyes." Melissa nodded, rising from the table. "Thank you for letting me be part of your special day, Ethan. It means more than I can say." Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward to hug her. "Will you come again?" he asked, his voice muffled against her shoulder. She looked at me over his head, her eyes questioning, respectful of my authority. It was perhaps the most significant change of all, this acknowledgement that the decisions about Ethan's life were mine to make now. "We'll see," I said, neither promising nor refusing. "One step at a time." She nodded, accepting this. "One step at a time," she agreed. "I'm working hard, Ethan. Every day. And even when I'm not here, I'm thinking about you, hoping you're happy." "I am happy," he assured her, pulling back to look at her face. "But I'd be happier if you got better and could visit more." "That's what I want too," she said, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "And I'm going to keep trying, every single day." As James led her to the door, she paused, turning back to me. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything. For raising him. For letting me see him today. For not giving up on me completely." I nodded, unable to find words for the complex emotions swirling inside me. Forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. Trust, once broken, could not be instantly restored. But perhaps, with time and consistent effort, we could build something new, not the mother-daughter relationship we'd once had, but something healthier, more honest, centered around the remarkable boy we both loved. After Melissa and James had gone, Ethan sat quietly on the porch swing, his expression thoughtful as he gazed up at the emerging stars. I joined him, wrapping a light blanket around his shoulders against the evening chill. "Are you okay?" I asked, settling beside him. That was quite a surprise. He nodded, leaning against me. "She seems different," he observed. "Calmer. More like when I was little before Derek." "Yes," I agreed. "She does seem different. Do you think she'll stay that way when she gets out?" The question was loaded with hope and fear, with the innocent wisdom of a child who had learned too young that people don't always keep their promises. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said honestly. "I hope so. But even if she doesn't, even if she struggles and makes mistakes, it doesn't change how much you're loved. It doesn't change our family." "Our family," he repeated, considering the words. "That's you and me and Rex. And maybe Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Harrington now too." I smiled, touched by his inclusive definition. "Yes, I suppose it is." "And Mom?" he asked, the question tentative. "Is she still part of our family, even though she did bad things?" I sighed, searching for the right words. "Families are complicated, Ethan. Your mom will always be your mom, and in that way, she'll always be part of our family. But being in a family isn't just about blood or names. It's about how we treat each other, how we show up for each other." He nodded, processing this. "So she has to earn it by keeping her promises and being better." "Something like that," I agreed. "Trust has to be earned, especially after it's been broken. But that doesn't mean we can't hope for her or be happy when she makes good choices." He was quiet for a long moment, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "I'm glad she came today," he said finally. "But I'm glad we live here with you, too. I'm glad things turned out this way, even though the bad stuff had to happen first." The simple statement took my breath away. This child, this extraordinary child who had endured abandonment, betrayal, and danger, was finding meaning in his pain, gratitude in his new reality. "I'm glad too," I told him, pulling him close. "So very glad." From inside the house, Frank called. "Anyone want hot chocolate? I'm making my special recipe." Ethan perked up immediately. "With the mini marshmallows and cinnamon? Would it be my special recipe without them?" Frank's voice carried through the screen door, warm with affection. "Coming," Ethan called back, jumping up from the swing. He paused, looking back at me. "Grandma, thank you for my birthday. It was the best one ever." As he darted inside, I remained on the porch, watching as the stars emerged one by one in the deepening twilight. The past 18 months had been a journey I never would have chosen, from betrayal to danger to renewal. But sitting here now, listening to the sounds of laughter from inside our home, I couldn't regret where that journey had led us. Melissa's theft had stripped away our financial security, our trust, our comfortable illusions. But in their place, we had built something stronger, a new family, forged in fire, bound by choice rather than obligation. A family that included an old soldier with a brave heart, a banker with unexpected kindness, and at its center, a boy whose courage had saved us all. And perhaps, someday, it might even include a daughter redeemed, a mother who had found her way back from the darkness. Not the same as before, never that, but something new, something honest, something earned. Evelyn. Frank appeared in the doorway, a steaming mug in his hand. Hot chocolates getting cold. I smiled, rising from the swing. Coming. As I stepped inside, into the warmth and light of our home, I felt a sense of completion, of rightness. The money Melissa had stolen was just money, replaceable, impersonal. But what we had gained in its place was beyond price: clarity, courage, and a family built on truth rather than illusion. When my daughter stole every penny from our accounts and ran off with her criminal boyfriend, my world shattered like glass. But from those broken pieces, my grandson and I had created a mosaic more beautiful than anything I could have imagined, a picture of resilience, of second chances, of love that transcends betrayal. And that, in the end, was the true legacy of Melissa's betrayal. Not loss, but transformation. Not an ending, but a beginning. Grandma. Ethan called from the kitchen. Mr. Wheeler's putting whipped cream on top. With a heart full of gratitude, I closed the door on the darkness outside and stepped fully into the light of our new life. The life my grandson had saved. The life we were building together, one day at a time. Some people say that when God closes a door, he opens a window. But sometimes I think he allows a door to be slammed in your face so you can finally see the mansion you've been living in all along. The mansion of genuine love, of unwavering loyalty, of quiet courage in the face of betrayal. And sitting at our kitchen table, watching Ethan and Frank argue good-naturedly about the proper ratio of marshmallows to hot chocolate, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't trade this mansion for all the money in the world. Because some treasures can't be stolen, some riches can't be taken away, and some betrayals, painful as they are, lead us exactly where we need to be: home.